Good Wednesday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Plenty of Browns to talk about this afternoon. The Browns introduced Jim Schwartz as the new defensive coordinator. Schwartz got his start in the NFL back in the early 90s as a scout on Bill Belichick's staff. Actually began as an unpaid intern for the Browns even before he was a scout. Schwartz talked today about what it was that was appealing about this Browns defensive coordinator's job.
I appreciate owners that are willing to make the improvements / capital improvements in order to be successful. I see that here. And then you just start, I had a little bit of a relationship with Andrew Berry from Philadelphia and knew the way he thought and how smart he was and his long-range vision. And when he was in Philly, I used to, in the back of my mind, I don't know that I ever told him this, it'll probably be news to him, but I always had in the back of my mind, man, that's a guy I'd like to work with again. And that's sort of my idea of a GM, just unflappable. The same all the time, didn't get too high, didn't get too, us coaches, we can get emotional. It's hard to wear a loss. Sometimes we get a little too high after a win, but that's not Andrew. He's straight down the middle, and I have a lot of respect for that consistency and things like that. And then with Kevin, we had met each other over the years and gone head to head a couple times, but really my attraction with him was we came up the same way in the NFL.
New Browns defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz talking about why he took the job in Cleveland. Kevin Stefanski, who he mentioned there, this is how he introduced his new defensive coordinator.
Coach Schwartz's resume speaks for itself. He's somebody that I have a ton of respect for. We did not know each other personally really before this process, but we have a lot of mutual friends, and I've admired his career from afar. Has done it at a high level, at multiple stops, and just pleased that we really believe he's the guy to lead our defense. And we're excited to add him to our staff, excited to add him to the organization and the wealth of knowledge that he can bring to this group, including myself.
And after that, Kevin Stefanski left the stage to Jim Schwartz, but he did say this in a statement. Jim has seen success at each of his coaching stops because he knows how to get the best out of his players and will match scheme to suit strengths. Jim's a passionate leader who believes in teaching the fundamentals. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. And Tim, it's a little bit of a snapshot there of why this job appealed to Jim Schwartz and what appealed to Kevin Stefanski about Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, and I think, from what Schwartz was talking about, obviously familiarity played a role, not just kind of in, obviously knowing Andrew Berry from their time together in Philadelphia, but also, familiarity and what he was talking about, Kevin Stefanski's role, the way he worked his way up the NFL coaching ladder. It's like what Jim Schwartz talked about as well, when he kind of got his start as a intern and then became a scout for Bill Belichick at the end of the initial run of the Browns before they moved to Baltimore in the mid-90s. That kind of path that he's taken, slowly working his way up the ladder where he's gotten all these defensive coordinator stops. And to me, I think that statement speaks volumes because it tells me we know what they're kind of looking for in defensive coordinators, a guy who's going to, maximize what his talent is and, do what he can to put them in the best positions to succeed. And I think that's been a criticism you and I have talked about before of some of the things that Joe Woods had a hard time really doing, especially last season for the Browns. So Schwartz is a guy who's proven he's been a defensive coordinator in Tennessee, Buffalo, and Philadelphia. And everywhere he's gone, the defenses have been very good. They're fast, they're physical, they create a lot of pressure and havoc. And certainly he's got a roster where he's got some talent to work with. And if he can kind of get the most out of them, this defense has a chance to really turn things around next season.
Well, Schwartz talked about what was important in his defensive scheme as well today.
We run a very D-line friendly scheme that eliminates a lot of conflict for those guys, and we were able to play guys off of that, and we sort of let those guys go and be disruptive. And I know this, over the course of my career, I've talked to a lot of offensive coaches. I've talked to a lot of quarterbacks over the years. And The way you affect the game the most in this league is by pass rush. And, it's hard to win in coverage. The rules have changed. They make it hard to put hands on guys, illegal contacts, ICTDH, DPI, all those things. It's hard, and these wide receivers are freak shows. But, you can still win one-on-one on pass rush, and a devastating pass rush goes a long way. You can create turnovers off a pass rush. And if you can rush with 4, it allows your blitz game to be so much more effective because you start blitzing on your terms.
And again, kind of dictating tempo, but what that tells you is this defensive line room is due for an upgrade.
Yeah, and I think we all kind of knew defensive tackle was going to be the priority. Something I said that, it needs to be a free agency need, not a draft need, because you need guys who can come in and have impacts. But you even look at just this season alone, the Browns were not able to get a lot of pressure. The third fewest in the NFL, I think it was 104, tied for the 5th fewest sacks, 34. And of those 34, Myles Garrett had 16. So when one guy's getting almost half your sacks, that's rarely ever a good sign. I mean, even from there, it's a 13 sack difference between Myles Garrett and Taven Bryan, who had the second most. So just no variety of pass rush help. It was basically Myles Garrett, and then everybody else, would pitch in once in a while. And that's, what we talked about last season was they just struggled to get any kind of pressure with 4. Joe Woods rarely blitzed, and you kind of understand why, because just didn't have the guys up front to create kind of pressure on their own. So with Jim Schwartz, we know he's all about creating pressure. That wide 9 scheme has been very successful, in multiple stops, where he's got the defensive ends out wider than the offensive tackles and the tight ends. So I think Myles Garrett's going to benefit from it. The question is where the help is going to come from and who kind of comes in, because clearly he wants to have his defense set up where his defensive line can be a strength and not the weakness, which outside of Myles Garrett, it's hard to find much on the defensive line that, really stood out last season.
Yeah, without question. The other thing that Schwartz talked about is what's important in linebackers in his system.
And I've seen some guys in their 215s or 220s that did, but I think it falls to the other things. It comes from toughness and instincts and explosiveness and the ability to play fast and think quick. And I would say this, I've had a lot of defenses over the years and since 2001, and some of them have been real good, not all of them have. But the thing I've taken the most pride from is when people say that we play fast and aggressive. Now, again, okay, I'm sitting up here. There's not one defense coordinator that's going to come up and say we want to play slow and soft. Hey, look, we're looking to be dumb, slow, and soft. Everybody wants to be smart, fast, and physical, but it just doesn't happen. There's a way that you can facilitate that, and I've sort of learned that over the years. And if you see our linebackers here, if I'm doing a good job, they're playing fast and physical, and there's not a lot of hesitation in their play.
And again, that's something that would be an upgrade for the Browns, is seeing that aggressiveness from the linebacking core.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the big thing, that came up when the Jim Schwartz hires came up is what it means for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in particular. And, I don't think it means anything for him. I think it's just, a continuation of, maximizing what I think he could do well, playing downhill and those sorts of things. And, he was also talking about the success he had, the big help he had with David Long, the linebacker from the Titans, who's very good as this season, only 227 pounds, 5'11". He's not a big guy. We're not talking like about a 250-pound guy. We're talking about smaller linebackers who have had success. And there's nothing that says smaller linebackers can't have success. It's just about skill set more than size and just kind of how you use that size. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing to watch, is how he deploys, JOK and what it means for the other linebackers. Is Anthony Walker coming back? Is Sione Takitaki, when he gets healthy, is he going to be on this team next year? What kind of role is he going to have towards the end of the season? Those sorts of things. Jacob Phillips as well, same kind of thing. So this front seven, I think, might look a little different just based on the things that, Jim Schwartz is looking for out of this defense. But, what it tells me is obviously he just wants this front seven to, as he says, play fast. And that was a problem a year ago where it seemed like guys were thinking too much, not acting reflexively, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. I'm sorry, but reacting kind of what they see, react and go rather than thinking. Because in the NFL, if you're thinking before you do something, that's probably not a good thing.
Yeah, it's almost like they were processing what they should have been doing, and that never works on defense. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time today.
Hey, this is Tim from Cleveland. Really love the show, enjoy watching it as much as I can. Anyway, I just wanted to say something to my fellow Browns fans. Anybody who's kind of on the fence with Jim Schwartz, this guy is phenomenal. I don't want to oversell him, but I think he's really going to turn around that side of the ball, and I think we're all going to be a lot happier this time next year. Anyway, thanks. Take care.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. It's the guy I wanted. We'll see. I liked what I heard, but I could have said that about a number of people over the past couple of years as well.
Yeah, and I mean, we got to wait 8 more months at least to start to kind of see how this goes. And I think that's the hardest thing about this is you can win all the press conferences, but you also can't fast forward time 8 or 9 months just to get to the end of the start of the actual race and see what everything's going to look like. But I think we can all agree that a big reason the Browns, finished 7-10, dead last in the AFC North, missed the playoffs, was that the defense was just a letdown, especially, in those first 6-7 games of the season when, we saw so many coverage breakdowns, run game breakdowns that really kind of permeated throughout the rest of the season. And it got less frequent at times, especially with the coverage breakdowns. But the big thing, and I think the thing that I think Jim Schwartz can bring, and we talked about the last week, is that, just trying to instill some toughness in this group. I mean, a guy that's not going to let them get down on themselves if something bad happens. He's going to challenge them, I think, to respond and challenge them to be accountable. And if something's wrong, go out and fix it. Don't feel sorry for yourself. Just go out and get the job done. And I think there were too many times where that didn't happen this past season, and that's what really hurt them. But the defense was any better, we're talking about a 9-8 team, maybe even a 10 or 10-7 team potentially. But those just proved too costly and something that has to be fixed because this defense was way too talented to look as poor as it did.
Yeah, I agree with you. Tim Bielik now. I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll also take a look at some free agent targets for the Browns. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, just a quick question. With the hiring of Jim Schwartz, does he get the full control of the defense and Kevin Stefanski can mind his own business on the other side of the ball? Okay, Dave, great show, brother. Be safe. Love you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tim, I don't think Kevin Stefanski kind of messed with Joe Woods on the other side of the ball. I think that's his mindset is, defense is your side, and that's just my read of the way it's been.
Yeah, and I do think it's interesting, obviously, considering Jim Schwartz has his own head coaching experience, that he knows how to run a unit. He's been a defensive coordinator for so long in his coaching career that he has so much experience out there that I imagine Kevin Stefanski should feel a lot more comfortable just kind of putting the defense in Jim Schwartz's hands than he did with Joe Woods, because, I mean, Jim Schwartz has had just so much success throughout his career that he's kind of let him do his thing and kind of see where it goes. The thing I found interesting is that in this press conference today is that Jim Schwartz didn't necessarily say he was going to pick his own staff. That was going to be up to Kevin Stefanski and those decisions. But I did also find it interesting that it seemed like he wasn't going to make excuses for that. He says it's his job to coach players, but he also is willing to coach coaches and on how he wants certain things done. And he pointed out that when he went to the Eagles, he was the last piece of that puzzle as far as, the staff goes. So he really had to kind of help teach his coaches what he wants. So I'm kind of interested what that's going to mean for the defensive staff this season and potentially going forward.
All right. This is one free agent each NFL team should sign or at least pursue in the offseason in 2023 from Pro Football Focus. For the Browns, they say defensive tackle A'Shawn Robinson. Robinson played 4-3 during his rookie contract with the Lions. Had his best season in 2018, primarily as a DT, right side of the formation. That would be where Jordan Elliott lined up, and they point out Elliott graded 116 out of 124 qualifiers at defensive tackle in 2022. Important to note, Robinson tore his meniscus last season and was injured. But again, those are going to be all the kind of guys that you look at, guys that have done it and have done it at a reasonably high level and won't cost a whole. You can't sign 4 of them at $15 million a pop, but you can sign one at a higher level and then 2 or 3 that are kind of coming back in one-year deal type of things.
100%. And, Robinson kind of fits the archetype that I've been talking about. He's 6'4", 330 pounds, and that's the type of guy I've been talking about for weeks. The true run-stuffing defensive tackle is going to hold up in the middle of the defensive front, take up blockers, and kind of free things up for other guys. And you mentioned the high run grade he had in 2021, even going back to 2018 when he was with the Lions, I believe, was the team he was drafted to. Yeah, he played 13 games that season. Run defense grade of 91.3 for A'Shawn Robinson. Now, if you're going to be good at stopping the run, especially in this wide 9 scheme, you got to have defensive tackles. And I think they got to at least have one guy who's run dominant who can fill that need. I know people are going to talk about the big names like Daron Payne from the Commanders or Javon Hargrave from the Eagles or somebody like that. Those guys are kind of pipe dreams because A, they cost a lot of money, and B, we don't even know if they're going to hit the market for one reason or another. So this is a guy in A'Shawn Robinson, the more you read about it, he's not kind of the sexy pick at defensive tackle, but you need a guy who's going to gum up the middle and free things up for everybody else around him, especially the linebackers to come in and shoot those gaps and, shut down the run game. And what we've seen from Jim Schwartz throughout his tenure at other places, stopping the run is a priority. So I got to imagine this is certainly the type of player that Andrew Berry would be going after this offseason.
All right, we're going to take a look at a couple more names, free agents that Jim Schwartz could bring over from the Tennessee Titans, where he was kind of a defensive assistant. Start with another defensive tackle, Teair Tart. Tart, better pass rusher than a run stopper, played 305 pass rush snaps, 26 pressures, 2 sacks. And again, that's a guy that won't be a big price one, but will be familiar with what is required from that Titans defense, which was pretty good.
Yeah, and obviously, worked with Jim Schwartz the last 2 seasons, with Schwartz being in Tennessee as a senior defensive assistant to Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator there. So there's obviously some familiarity. I'm sure, based on that alone, it makes sense that it'd be a fairly easier sell for Tart because he would come into a system where he's already got familiarity. He knows the coach, and I think that could be important. And like you said, maybe I don't know if they go get that star, but certainly a couple pieces added into that defensive tackle room, a couple of veterans is a good way to go. Guys who can stop the run and guys who can also play the pass, because you need to have guys who can be on the field for all 3 downs potentially. Tart seems like a guy who can do that, maybe not an elite level, but just at a solid, steady level. And for most part of the season, the Browns didn't even really have solid, steady play in defensive tackle to begin with.
Yeah, but that's an area that definitely needs some upgrading and some work. Safety, Andrew Adams is the second one. Adams, an intelligent safety that excels in coverage, 74.8 coverage grade past season. Some struggles at times in run support, coming off a serious injury, so he tore his patella tendon in week 17, but would provide good depth if healthy. I don't know about you, Tim. I think they need to add a true free safety, especially if they're going to play one high, that single safety, which tends to be more of what this defense plays with Jim Schwartz, at least historically.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how you feel kind of where I am that, with John Johnson and Grant Delpit, they seem kind of maybe redundant isn't the right word, but they feel like their strengths kind of coincide with each other as opposed to complement each other. I think Grant Delpit, he's got a lot of potential to still be a very good player, maybe even potentially sneak into a Pro Bowl. But in my mind, he's a true strong safety. I've said his best work comes when he's playing downhill, when he's playing in the run game. And if you can get a player like Andrew Adams, who's a true free, maybe even somehow Jesse Bates from the Bengals, if he makes it to the market, because he'll probably be one of the top safeties available. A guy like that on the opposite end to complement Grant Delpit and to be that true center fielder who can be that last line of defense, who can kind of patrol the deep part of the field, not really let anybody break loose behind them. I think that's really the only thing the secondary is truly missing at this point.
All right, and the third one, again, this guy ties to Jim Schwartz, new defensive coordinator. DeMarcus Walker, defensive end. Browns unable to generate much pressure from the edge outside of Myles Garrett. You could say that as a total as well. Sure to be a big focus for Schwartz. Creativity with defensive line play is his specialty. 2022 with the Titans, Walker 32 quarterback pressures and 8 sacks. So again, you're going to look to get, I don't know if a bookend's the right word, somebody that you can put on the opposite side that can at least eat a lot if they're going to go single coverage and double team and triple team Myles Garrett each and every snap.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the big thing. You maybe don't need a superstar number 2 to go opposite Myles Garrett, but you need a guy who's going to win one-on-ones because there's going to be a lot of doubles, triples, chips, you name it. Whatever teams do to slow down a pass rusher, you're going to see that done to Myles Garrett a lot. And I would imagine, that's going to free up whoever else on the other side for potentially one-on-one coverage, one-on-one, protection schemes in that situation. And I'm fascinated, who kind of fits in that wide 9 scheme. And, looking at the weight of DeMarcus Walker, 280 pounds, I know it says in that article as well that they like the bigger type of edge rushers. I feel like personally that scheme, the wide 9, is almost more favorable to smaller edge rushers, guys that can win with the first step, win with quickness, and just really get around the edge and just really kind of trap a quarterback in the pocket because the tackle can't get out there. So maybe in my mind, I'm not Andrew Berry. We're going to probably disagree on this, but I think if you're looking for a second edge rusher, maybe I'm looking for, a smaller, quicker guy, even a guy who's maybe more traditional 3-4 outside linebacker, just because, again, with the wide 9, you want some quickness out there and a guy who's going to win with that first step.
Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Another side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll hear from Jim Schwartz about assembling his staff. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, how are you? Love the show, long-time viewer, long-time caller. I just have a quick question for you. Now with the hire of the defensive coordinator, now does he get to bring his own defensive staff, like bring his own guys that he wants to have on there, or is he just kind of replacing Joe Woods and stuck with the guys that are already there? Just curious. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Go Browns. Woof, woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Well, that very question was asked of Jim Schwartz at the press conference today. Here is Jim Schwartz's answer to the staff.
It's not my staff. It's Kevin's staff. And he's hired me to be the defense coordinator. So that's all I can really say there. I've had over the years, I've had jobs, like when I got hired in Philadelphia as defense coordinator, I was the last guy hired, and I had never worked with any of the coaches before. We got up to speed pretty quickly and flipped that defense pretty quickly and won the Super Bowl the next year. Buffalo was similar. I've also had where I've had a lot of input, and so I've done it a lot of different ways. But when it's all said and done, that's Kevin's job, along with Andrew, along with the Haslams. They're the people that are making staffing decisions, not me.
And Tim, again, Kevin Stefanski's a collaborative guy. It's not like he's going to say, these are your guys. There will be a give and take and a discussion. And I'm sure there will be guys that Jim Schwartz wants to bring in. There might be a guy or two that Kevin Stefanski wants him to keep on staff, and I'm sure from the sounds of it, Jim Schwartz is open to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear based on what I said. I think we discussed this a little earlier that, he's not going to make excuses for, not having his guys on staff or whatever, having the guys he wants, in the staff room with him, making these decisions and coaching his guys on defense. It's probably going to be a mix, I would assume, kind of like you said. Like, he may get some input. Kevin Stefanski might want to keep a guy or two on, like you said. I'm curious how that's going to shake out, because that's kind of the next thing that we're going to kind of see out of this is, what kind of influence does Jim Schwartz have as far as, like, what kind of position coaches he can bring in? Who's he looking to get? Especially, with defensive line coach and all those key positions. I'm curious what it's all going to look like. So, I mean, we're going to get to really know more over the next few weeks, but Jim Schwartz basically makes it clear that, even if they're not his guys, he knows he has to get them to understand the system he kind of wants to run as a defensive coordinator and get them to kind of do the things he wants to do. So he's not a guy who's going to necessarily need his own guys, but he's going to want them all to coach a certain way, which I think is kind of crucial as far as trying to set a tone for what that defense is going to look like.
All right, let's take a look at this. This is most pressures by a team this season, and it kind of shows you just how much the Browns struggled. So the Chiefs were top with 178. Jaguars and Eagles 168, Cowboys 160, Giants 155. Those are all playoff teams. 49ers 151. Then you go down, Browns were third worst at 104. 74 pressures on the quarterback behind the Chiefs, the top team. And when you look at what the teams look like on paper, that shouldn't be.
No, and I mean, obviously there's reasons for that. We saw, Myles Garrett had the car accident, and it took him some time to, physically recover from that. Jadeveon Clowney was far from what we saw in 2021. The defensive tackles really didn't get the job done. That, everybody, Andrew Barrett was hoping that they were going to take a step forward. That didn't happen. And I think, what the other guy that really doesn't get mentioned this is Alex Wright, and he's a guy, coming into last season, I wasn't expecting too much from because, all the scouting reports said that he still had a lot of work to do. He was very raw, and you could kind of see that just wasn't quite producing. That's okay, because, I mean, he was out there, he was, being aggressive, he was working hard. Now he just needs to kind of, hone his technique, and I think, getting Jim Schwartz in the building is really going to help his development. But bottom line is they just did not get enough from pressure in the quarterback. It seemed like there were too many times the quarterback had so much time to throw. And I don't care how good your secondary is, and the Browns have a pretty good secondary. If you give a quarterback enough time to throw, he'll pick any secondary part in the NFL. It is the NFL after all. And the talent margin is so close that you have to be able that really you have to have your defense working in concert. The coverage has to help the pressure, but more importantly, the pressure has to help the coverage. And the pressure did not help the coverage last season really much at all.
All right, let's take a look. This is the NFL rookie class rankings for 2022. It's from ESPN. So they rule the Seahawks as the top rookie class. The Jets, number 2, and the Chiefs, number 3. They have the Browns at 17. Browns had a surprisingly strong draft class considering the absence of a first or second round pick. Star is third round cornerback Martin Emerson played 72% of the defensive snaps as the third corner. Emerson allowed just 5.3 yards per target, 47% completion rate in coverage. And when you look at it, Emerson was really, not only was he the star of it, he was really the only guy that outperformed where he was drafted. You know, Cade York in the 4th round was a bit of a disappointment. Winfrey and Thomas had flashes, but I mean, Martin Emerson was really, he's 17th of the rookie class rankings because they didn't get much from the other guys.
Right, and I think that's fair to, you know, from 3rd to 7th round picks, you're not expecting those guys to be stars right out of the box. Those are guys that are there for a reason. Either they are, you know, not as athletically gifted as some of the other guys in front of them, or they need some work. And those are guys that you need more time to kind of develop. But, you know, Martin Emerson, you know, jumping right out of the gate and being impactful right away, that's a home run pick right now for Andrew Berry. That's one of the ones I think it's only 1 year, and he's got to continue to prove it and prove that he's not just a one-year wonder. But, you know, what you see out of him is kind of the production and, you know, the level of play you expect from, you know, a high second or even a 1st-round pick in some ways. The only thing he didn't do was he didn't intercept the football, but, you know, you look at those numbers again, 47% completion rate, 5.3 yards per target. In the NFL, when you're a rookie corner, you are going to get picked on, and he really did not make it easy for quarterbacks who were going after him, who were, like I said, you know, picking on him. And the fact that you can get a 3rd round pick to perform at that level, that's humongous. And I mean, that, you know, improves your draft prospects going forward. That, you know, that improves a lot of things going forward. That makes the draft class look better. And I think ideally that's what you hope you can get out of these lower picks, is you have a guy that pops right away. Because if you do that, then, you know, you get some immediate help, and then there's other guys that should be able to provide some reinforcements along the way.
Yeah, with no 1st-round picks, you need some of those guys to pop, and Martin Emerson certainly did. Tim Bielik, Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com, as always. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
You too. Tim Bielik, make sure you're checking out pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Sports for CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports for CLE. The Browns introduced Jim Schwartz as their new defensive coordinator. Schwartz talked about the importance of communication and accountability for the players.
I've learned a lot from guys over the years of just how to connect with guys. And at this point in my career, I probably spend more time doing that than actually, doing schemes. Scheme-wise, there's probably not a whole lot that we'll do here that, high school coach probably couldn't draw up just as good. But that's not the secret sauce. The secret sauce is getting guys playing together and that accountability that goes into it. And I would say this, if I'm doing a good job, we'll hold our best players the most accountable. And if you start from that position, then everything else is gravy. But if you don't hold your best players most accountable, then you can have some bad vibes and, different things can go on because, they know like, hey, you're coaching that guy because he's an undrafted. You said that to him because he's an undrafted free agent as opposed to a high first-round draft pick or a high-priced free agent or a veteran player.
Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, appreciate the time. You wrote an article, why the hiring of Jim Schwartz as defense coordinator, best move for the Browns right now. Take us through that. And we also heard from Jim and just your reactions to that as well. All right, having a little bit of trouble with our connection.
Okay, thanks for having me. Yes, I just felt. You got me?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, we will try to reconnect with Fred. So the other thing, again, communication a big deal for the defenses for Jim Schwartz. So we talked about the importance of communicating, especially relative to coaching defense.
I think that all starts with trust, and players, I've said this over the years, players really don't care if you're young, old, if you're black, white, if you're loud, if you're quiet. If you can help them, they'll listen. And if they know you're coming from an honest spot and you're telling them the truth, they might not like what you say, but they'll take it because they know that it's coming from a performance base and it's coming from the truth. So establishing trust is job one.
And again, Jim Schwartz talking about what is important defensively. So let's welcome Fred Greetham in from the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, just your reaction to what you heard from Jim Schwartz today. And again, we having trouble getting Fred. All right, we will move on, see if we can reconnect with Fred. All right, along the lines of Jim Schwartz, has coached a lot of really talented defensive linemen. So in his career, he has coached Albert Hainsworth, Ndamukong Suh, Marcel Darius, Fletcher Cox. So some big-name defensive tackles, and that wide nine scheme kind of helps get them one-on-one situations and allows them to be successful. Along those lines, Albert Hainsworth, one of those guys that we talked about that was an all-pro for the Tennessee Titans. We found this. He wrote a letter to his younger self in the Players Tribune. And one of his bits of advice, if nothing else, listen to me on this, Albert, do not leave the Tennessee Titans. Your defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, is a mastermind. No matter how much I tell you this, you probably will never realize it until your career is over, but it's true. Again, that's Albert Hainsworth, who had a lot of success with the Titans, left and then was unable to really reach that level that he had while he was playing for Jim Schwartz, who was named the new defensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns today, had his introductory press conference. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out, so we will have more on Sports for CLE. Continue talking Browns here. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, I mentioned earlier, you wrote the article that Jim Schwartz was the right guy for the Browns right now. Take us through that and what your reaction were to what you heard from him today.
Well, thanks, Dave. You know, the biggest thing is I just felt like the Browns are in a window to try to win now. And you don't, not taking anything away from, you know, a guy who's been a position coach somewhere else or from the candidates they had. I wanted a former head coach or former defensive coordinator, somebody that's been there, done that, has a proven track record. And Jim Schwartz definitely has that, you know, won the Super Bowl with the Eagles. He's a no-nonsense type of guy, fiery. And I just think he checks the boxes the Browns need because Kevin Stefanski pretty much turns the defense over to the coordinator. And I just felt Joe Woods was maybe too similar to Stefanski in temperament. Nothing wrong with that. But I just think Schwartz is a guy that will command respect from day one on the defense. And they had so many shenanigans on that side of the ball this year. I just think that will be eliminated. And I don't think this team has to be the 85 Bears. They just need to go from giving up 23, 24 points a game to maybe 18, 19, 20, you know, in just that stretch of 4 games where they lost, you know, by 9 points. That was the difference between making the playoffs or not. You know, blown coverages, that Jets game and the Chargers game, and you're in the playoffs with a 9-8 record, and that's without just Deshaun Watson playing for 11 games.
Yeah, and again, the defense woefully underperformed. We showed a thing earlier in the show. They were 30th in pressures in the league, so that means there's only 2 teams that were worse than them. That shouldn't happen when you have Myles Garrett lining up at defensive end, and you also have Jadeveon Clowney, and you have Jeremiah. You have too many pieces to not be able to get pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when they did, it was too late. You know, you can't. The last 2 years, the first half of the season, the defense underperformed, and then they started playing better in the second half. But it was too late, especially this year. When you're 4-7, the season was over. And I just think you have to hit the ground running from day one. Jim Schwartz had a defense. Sure, he had great personnel, but he's known for developing defensive tackles and run stopping. This team, more than anything, was near the bottom in run stopping. Anybody who watched the Browns, 10 of the last 14 games, they gave up 135 yards or more rushing. And you can't win in the NFL with that type of defensive play. And the year they won the Super Bowl, they were number 1. They gave up 79 yards a game. So I'm not saying it's all on him. They have to get the right personnel, but he knows what it looks like and will help them develop or get the players to fit those pieces.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Dave, recently a major topic has been brought up concerning the Browns organization, and that is the lack of communication. This better cease immediately to head the team in the right direction of a winning NFL team. Now that we believe we have our franchise quarterback in Deshaun Watson and our defensive coordinator in Jim Schwartz, daily Jim Schwartz and Andrew Berry should be together discussing the type of players needed to fit into Schwartz's defensive philosophy. Given Schwartz has been in the NFL a while, he should know the exact players the Browns must go out and get signed. And Kevin Stefanski and Deshaun Watson better be together daily discussing what plays and schemes will work best to electrify Watson's best abilities. This all must happen immediately so the Browns team is ready to go full force starting with day one of training camp. No excuses will be allowed next year. Every aspect of the team must be in place and headed in a winning direction starting with day one.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Fred, the thing that was interesting with Jim Schwartz, he kept going back to communication several times, and that's something that the people in Philadelphia said he was really good with, and also in Tennessee. So that appears to be a strength. Players, for whatever reason, will communicate with him.
Yeah, he talked about the relationships he's had over the years. Malcolm Jenkins, different guys established. Like I said, he's been there, done that. He commands the respect. Just the fact that he won a Super Bowl on that side of the ball, with the Eagles. I think you have a young team, young defensive players. I think you're going to command the respect from day one. He's fiery. He's getting your face. But he also, talks about when they get off the field, they can get along. They can be friends. So I think that, he is going to be a nice compliment to Kevin Stefanski. Stefanski's the head coach, obviously, and Schwartz knows his place, and he deferred to him, multiple times in the press conference, and rightly so. But I think Stefanski's going to turn it over to Schwartz on the defensive side, and I think from day one there is going to be communication, accountability. How much did it drive you crazy, the blown coverages the last 2 years? And then when you thought it was over, what happened on the final game? Ironically, they blew a coverage and Pickens went 31 yards for a touchdown. Nobody covered him. And you just can't have that. And I think those things will be eliminated under Schwartz. And just that alone will make a big difference. So I just think that, to me, it just makes the most sense is taking what you have and putting a guy in position. And they were asking about communicating with Andrew Berry. He said one of the reasons he came here was because Andrew Berry, they were together in Philadelphia in 2019. And Schwartz said today that in talking with him and getting to know him, he said, that's one guy I would like to join someday when he's a GM. And so that's why I really think Berry was influential in bringing him here. So I do think they'll talk. I do think he'll say, this is the type of guy I need. Berry has went more for the athletic hybrid, smaller linebackers, defensive tackles. It will be interesting to see if they retool that area. We saw they got blown off the ball against the run, starting with about the Falcons game. So I think most of us watching the Browns could say, you need to beef up and get some run stoppers. We talked about it on this show before last season. They need some guys that can stop the run. We'll see. And by the way, Schwartz has a rapport with a lot of guys in that category that he might be able to influence to come this way.
Absolutely. Along those lines, Schwartz talked about the type of linebackers that he needs to make this system work.
Yeah, we've played with a lot of different style guys over the time. I think the things that make the most difference when it comes to linebackers is instincts and communication ability and explosiveness. I've played with some guys that have been in their low 220s. In Tennessee, David Long is outstanding. He's 215 pounds. There have been plenty of guys in the NFL that played light. Go back to Derek Brooks and, remember him coming out as a safety, as a linebacker, and but he just was a cobra and he could strike.
And Fred, he went on to say, you got to be aggressive and coming after it in the run game. And it's going to be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see how Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah plays with Jim Schwartz as his defensive coordinator. That more than anybody is somebody that I'm really interested to see.
Well, that's interesting because I didn't get the question out, but one of my colleagues did. The linebackers with the Eagles when he were there were bigger guys, more like the Reggie Ragland, 250, 260, bigger guys. And then the Browns, their personnel is lighter. And then Tennessee, the last 2 years, he mentioned David Long. He's similar to JOK. And has he changed his philosophy? I think what you hear from him is he's going to adapt to the personnel that he has. And what a concept, play to the strength. But I do think that what I like most is his aggressiveness. If you look at him in his years as coordinator, they played man-to-man press coverage. I think the last year he was a coordinator with Philadelphia, they were 5th in the NFL. What did the Browns do? They got Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson, all these guys to play corner, but yet it seemed like Joe Woods was playing soft zone all the time. If you put guys out there to press on the outside, that frees up guys to go get the quarterback, to go stop the run, things like that. So that's what I think he'll bring, is that aggressive style.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the players want to play that style. If you are a Denzel Ward and can cover man-to-man, or a Greg Newsome and can cover man-to-man, or a Martin Emerson and can cover man-to-man, you don't want to sit back in a soft zone because it's not what you do best.
Right. And that's what I think he'll tailor, what he has, because you can only make so many moves, especially this offseason without a first-round pick. You're really left to free agency, trades, but I do think they'll retool, and I think they'll be able to bring in, some guys, particularly in free agency, and he'll tip his hand, the Browns will, when they start making moves on what kind of style he's planning on playing.
Yeah, I would imagine the free agents will be defensive tackles. Is that your thought as well?
Well, I think that, honestly, the impact moves have to be free agency. You cannot, even on offense, I don't think you can count on a second-round draft pick being an impact player. You need to get a veteran receiver, or even two, that could step in immediately and make plays like in between Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper. And then on defense, you can't wait for a rookie like Winfrey or somebody in their rookie year, and by the end of the season, they're starting to get it. You need a guy that you can plug right in, even if it's a one-year guy, a 30, 32-year-old guy that you bring in immediately to stop the run. I think you can get those type guys.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we continue talking Browns. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, this is Mustafa, 50-year Brown fan. And I'd like to see some changes next year, starting at the top with Kevin Stefanski. For one, I would like to see him do more with the entire team, not just bury his face in the playbook for the offense. There's a defense, there's a special teams. You should be able to communicate with your OC and your DC, your special teams. You should be communicating with all of these things. And, I hate to see Joe Woods go out like that. I think he is a good coach, but some of that falls on Stefanski. Did he even know what was going going on with some of the defensive things. So he's got to spread himself more around the team. It's like he wasn't in tune with the defense. He wasn't in tune with special teams. He's just worried about the offense. I just want to know you guys' opinion about that. Thanks. Keep doing what you're doing. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Fred, I can't imagine that he wasn't involved somewhat. Just because he's looking at a play sheet doesn't mean that he's not involved with the other coordinators. A lot of those guys are on the headsets with him, so there is communication. It's a little bit more advanced than it was back in the day, if you will.
Yeah, that's his style. He's even keeled. He never gets too excited, too emotional, not only when they show him on the sideline, but even, when he talks to us. He is what he is. And that's why I think, at least on defense, is good, because I think he can be maybe the bad cop that maybe Joe Woods wasn't, because he has a similar temperament style that Kevin Stefanski does. I do think Kevin Stefanski knows everything that's going on. But one of the things, that bothered me was, the Lane Kiffin comments when he's talking about Jadeveon Clowney in the 7th game of the year is opting out, that he only wants to play on 3rd down. I don't think the organization's very happy, that all came out. But it points back to me, Stefanski had to know that. And he also had to, you would have thought there would have been more repercussions, because that festered then the whole season. So I just think that he makes a good point. It is. You're the coach of the whole team, and you really have to have the whole team. You can't be pointing fingers, well, the offense is doing great, but it's all on the defense, or vice versa, or the special teams. You're 53 guys. You got to bring them all together, and that's your job as a head coach, is to create a team. And I think that was the biggest thing missing with this group, because they have good personnel, and it took a different type of leadership on the offense than it does on the defense this year. And I think he learned from that. I think by this hire of Schwartz, I think maybe he's seeing some of the weak points he has, and that this will help on the overall team. But I agree, they need to come together as a team and play all together, not as an offense, not as a defense, but as one team.
All right, this is from 33rdteam.com. That's a collection of former front office types, some head coaches in it as well, grading every NFL's head coaching performance in 2022. For Kevin Stefanski, they give him a D. The only reason it isn't an F, because the waiting game Cleveland had to play with Deshaun Watson, who was suspended the first 11 games. Browns had a major meltdown on defense. And when you look at it, Fred, it's hard to argue that it was a hugely disappointing season based on the roster that it had. I can't argue with it. Is that a fair criticism of what went on with the Browns?
Yeah, absolutely. It was all in the defense, in my opinion. I mean, I never expected Jacoby Brissett and the offense to be a top 10 offense in the first 11 games. I get why they immediately turned over to Watson, because of the contract and getting him ready for the future. But the defense let them down in the first half of the season. If they would have just played a little better and not had blown coverage, I mean, how could you script to blow that game against the Jets? I just don't think you could have scripted it, in a WWE deal to come out any worse for the Browns than that. And then that Chargers game, one stop, or any of them. You can call it the Ravens first game or the Falcons game. All you needed was a stop, in any of those games, and you made the playoffs despite not having Watson. So it was all in the defense. It didn't matter how they played later. The offense, I'm not concerned with them. I think they're going to be, Stefanski showed what he could do with Baker Mayfield in 2020, showed what he could do with Jacoby Brissett. There is no question Watson has more talent than both of them. That's the challenge, is Stefanski has to be able to marriage Nick Chubb in the running game with the passing game. And if he doesn't, they're going to be in trouble. But I think the offense will still be able to put up 25, 30 points a game. It's all on the defense, like I said earlier, getting respectable. They don't have to be a top 5 defense. They can just get in the top half of the NFL. They would have won 2 or 3 more games this year.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it very much, Fred.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Have a great day.
All right, Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. Really good stuff on the Orange and Brown Report. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.